Good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Amplifier Podcast. I'm Don Cooper and your host, and I've got our co-host and team performance specialist Mallory Murphy with us today. Welcome, Mallory.
Hey, Don, it's great to be back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about more things around action and productivity today. In our last episode, we were talking about the individual action instincts that are measurable and the individual action skills that you help people uncover in your workshop. But today we're going to be taking it to the next level in the conversation, and we're going to be talking about the actual formula, the action formula, and the action sequence. And fundamentally, I believe that every member of your team in the audience, the people on your team, generally want to be successful. They want to be big contributors to the team. They want to be productive, and they probably already feel like they are contributing and top performers and are highly productive. But you as the leader, you as the entrepreneur, you as the manager are maybe feeling like things could be better, things could be more effective, things could be scalable, things can be repeatable, so that as you grow your team and as team members change and move into seats, or some people come and some people leave, that you're not having to recreate the wheel every single time something changes in your organization. And I think it's a huge issue, both for getting there and maintaining it, and then seeing continuous improvement. And what I'm excited about in this conversation is sharing with our listeners that there's a formula, there's science behind how you can create scalable productivity, and it doesn't have to be a grind. What do you think about that, Mallory?
I love this, that there is a formula, that it is simple to use, because when you are dealing with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial businesses, things move fast and we don't have time to just sit down and go through all of the ins and outs. And I'm going to ask you a little bit later to explain the differences between process, procedure, and policy, and how all of this works together with what we're going to be talking about today. But one thing that I think all entrepreneurs can understand is things never move fast enough for them. And there seems to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back because something changes, or we've missed something along the way, or it's not documented. But the traditional mindset of thinking is, well, to document it, it's going to take me forever to do this. And we're going to change that mindset really quickly here with how we do that with our teams in a very quick, efficient, science-based method that will help entrepreneurs 10x their business so fast.
I'm excited. Let's dive in. So there's a couple of simple concepts in this whole driving and scaling productivity. So let's start about what we call the action formula and the science behind it. So can you, at a high level, explain the action formula and how it was developed by Dr. BJ Fogg from Stanford, and how you integrate it into what you do in your workshop? So there's a lot packed in there, so I'm just going to let you kind of go.
Sounds good. So one thing that I want to remind our listeners was, when we are talking about this action formula, I want to remind everybody that we're talking about human behavior, that there is a huge human element to us being able to make this action formula work. So Dr. BJ Fogg from Stanford taught me how to create and develop these and change human behavior. He's wrote a book called Tiny Habits, which I definitely recommend if you're needing more information on how it all works in the details. But the long and the short of it is that behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt. So when you are able to manipulate that formula in different ways, we're able to identify where the problem is and how to correct it. And so when we're looking at behavior, that can be whether it's what we want our result to be. And then the motivation, why are we getting there? Your ability, do we have the right training? Do we have the right knowledge? And that prompt can simply be as something as easy as, do I have a calendar reminder that's popping up and reminding me that this needs to get done every day? I'm sure, Dawn, you know, on your teams over your extensive career here that you are constantly nagging people. Why isn't this one thing not getting done all the time? Like, it's basic. It's something that you should be doing, but they're getting caught in the weeds. Do you ever find that kind of situation happening?
I had a coaching conversation with one of our managers yesterday, and he had this mess he had to clean up. And we went through a process of sort of just unpacking what he wanted to get done, what the end goals were, and what were the obstacles. And immediately, I spotted the problem. He didn't have a prompt, anything in his calendar, even a time block for 15 minutes to just act on the issue. And one of the biggest mistakes, and one of the things that I want to just kind of point out that is so important, I experience it with my family, even with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, and with everyone on our team, is what Mallory talked about there is a behavior and action equals MAP, a motivation, an ability, and a prompt. And when the action isn't happening, if there's an action not happening, then you can reverse that formula and go inaction equals PAM. And that's the way that you need to unpack it. Most managers, most people, including sometimes people in my own family, say to me, when something doesn't get done, they instantly go to the person doesn't want to do it.
Yes.
Indicating want is a motivation, meaning it's the M part of that formula. And most people will make the jump to the conclusion that something isn't getting done because that person has a bad attitude, or that person isn't motivated, or that person doesn't care. There's a whole bunch of affect things that people apply to when something doesn't get done. But the reality is that the best way to analyze when an action doesn't get done is to look at the inverse of the action formula. So if the action formula is motivation, ability, and prompt when something gets done effectively, when it doesn't get done effectively, it's PAM, and that's the way you analyze it. And that's the easiest way to spot a problem in any process step or in any action by any person on your team, including your friends, your family, your spouse, your children, is what is the prompt or the missing prompt? There's a prompt that's missing. And if you can find that, often you can solve the problem. Hey, put this 15-minute time block in your calendar with an alert saying, do this now. And that might be enough to get you or that person to take action, to then use their ability to deal with the issue. Because when you're working with that formula, it's not just a tool for designing action, it's a tool for managing and understanding your team and how they might be struggling. And so if you don't have a prompt, fix it. If there's still an issue, it's still not a motivation issue, it's probably an ability issue. And so the way that you fix the ability is with 3 possible solutions. You give them a tool like a form or a template. You look at what training they had, and we'll come back to that part of ability when we talk about my soapbox rant about policies and procedures and processes. I won't go there yet. We'll go there when we talk about it, because it is a huge insight that a lot of people need to understand. And then finally, if you give someone the tool and you have confirmed that they know how to do it, they have the right training for that ability, the other way that you can improve abilities is to simplify the action. How do you make it easier to do? It could be removing some complexities and multiple mouse clicks, or it could be, whatever it is, make it easy. And then finally, if you've got the right prompts in place, you've confirmed the ability, then you've got to look at motivation, but it should be done in that order. And, what I like about the insights around what what Dr. Fogg has done in creating this sort of, now it's a simple formula. It took BJ 20 years to develop this concept. And, in the world of physics, when a formula is really simple, physicists say it's beautiful. And that's why Einstein's E equals mc squared is such a powerful formula. And for me, B equals MAP is that level of powerful formula in understanding how you can help your people become way more effective. And so, as I'm also trained by BJ Fogg, and I'm a huge fan of his work because I just think it's so powerful, and it's the basis of how you get things done in your life
I
and in
think
your business.
absolutely. And I think if, like, just like you said with the Einstein, if entrepreneurial teams and businesses, if they remember nothing else of their formulas or anything else, B equals MAP can solve so many problems within a business. And
Yeah.
so the way that I have created and designed these experiences that we work with our teams is to build up to that exactly. So we actually kind of go through the B equals MAP and manipulation of this formula, just like you said, in conversation before we get to the diving deep into each behavior and action. So when we look at how just to recap from our last episode, we talked about our amplified performance experiences. So we start with talking about your action instincts, how you instinctively do things, and why are things working, why are things not working, because of who you are. Where are your strengths, and are we leveraging those strengths? Right? That's that behavior, and that's that motivation piece as well. Then we turned into looking at your unique action skills. What are the things that you love to do? What are the things that power you through your day, that are the top of your to-do list, that you were passionate about? That if you said, okay, Don, I'm not going to pay you, but I need to get you to do these 3 things today, you'd be like, okay, I love to do these. I don't care if you're not paying me. Right? I mean, I don't agree with don't pay, like, pay your people, but like,
Look, we would all live lives of leisure if we didn't need finance, but the reality in our world is we do. And so we should all get paid well for doing great work, right?
absolutely. So when we're talking about these experiences, and we're looking at, well, how does one build onto the other, and why do we need to do them in this order? It's so that you can understand your strengths as individuals, as teams. Then we go into, where are we utilizing those strengths, right? Where is that action taking place inside that business, coexisting with your strengths that you have? And then how do we pair that with, because when we go through the whole formula of your initial performance workshop, we have like a whole quadrant, and we go through each task that you have, and we say, why is this not getting done? Or why do you like doing this? Or why do you not have, like, what is missing for you to be more effective at this task? And that kind of essentially starts the whole behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt. And we start to identify in a very laid back atmosphere, what is the problem? Then from there, we have already identified and are able to look at each task that our teams or our individuals are struggling with and say, okay, maybe it's just not a natural strength of yours. You don't have that action instinct. Is this something that we need to look at being delegated? Is this something that it has to happen? This is part of your count on abilities for your role. Are you missing that training piece? Are you missing that prompt? And sometimes it is that simple as removing something as simple as 2 extra mouse clicks, because now it's simple, right? So, and we have to keep thinking that the way things have been done is not the way we need to do things to move forward. And we're seeing that more and more in our world with advances in technology, right? So if we're allowing technology to come in and AI to help us out, why are we not empowering our people to be doing the things that they love to do, that they are most powerful doing? So all of this, all these experiences that we've combined together lead up to this action formula and this action sequencing that just takes that team to the next step in their growth and development and making these teams and individuals easy. Like you said, you've got a manager who is struggling with the same task over and over again. And sometimes in business, what we just see is results not being met, even if they are getting everything else done. But this one thing becomes that rock in the shoe that's never getting done, that becomes their Achilles heel. And it's like, okay, you're done. You can't get this done. I'm done with you. Well, we want to take that step back and go, well, are you really using this person or this team in the most effective way? And if this problem can be solved as easy as, like you said, a prompt, a time block, removing some mouse clicks. Is it knowledge? We'll get into your 3P rant here in a minute. And we'll like all of these things are what influence and affect your teams and individuals' performance. So that's how we take everything from step one all the way through. And I call them an experience because I don't believe in these workshops where you go in, you spend a day or two, and you get all this information and you're like, this is awesome, and you do nothing with it. I wanted to create something that I would enjoy showing up to and participating with. And we've got some very interesting personalities on our teams that I love and really contribute to our family feel that we have. And I asked them, like, some of these people have been doing this with you for 10 years, and they've heard these things and they've heard your ideas. And they came to me and they said, I've heard Dawn talk about this, but this is the first time I experienced it in a way that I can move forward with it. And that was the biggest praise I've ever received, because that was the goal, was to be able to make it so simple. And people love to talk about themselves, right? So when we're talking about this team performance and individual performance, and we're moving into this action formula, this is that human aspect. This is, how do we make our people empowered to do their jobs better? So that's what we can, like, what we do with our whole workshops. That's what we expect from our teams, our entrepreneurs, individuals, when we're doing that. So I just kind of connected all the dots, I hope, a little bit from beginning to where we are now. Now, the next part, I think, for us to really understand where we're going with this whole action formula and action sequencing is for your soapbox, Dawn. I need you to tell the audience why understanding the difference between process, procedure, and policy is so important to an entrepreneurial business.
Well, I'll go one step further and say it's important for all businesses. Here's the rant, folks. Policies and manuals do not create action. They're rule books, they're compliance books. Procedures do not create action. They are teaching tools. They are great source material. But having a policy or having a safety manual or a quality manual or a sales manual won't get anything done. Having a 12-page, 47-step procedure won't ensure that the end result gets created. They are not tools of action. They are tools of knowledge. They are tools of learning, and they won't get a darn thing done in your business. Stop telling people when they ask you how to do it, what am I supposed to do? Stop telling them to read your darn safety manual. Stop telling them to read your darn quality manual. Now, I'm going to share a couple of stories that just epitomize this, right? A number of years ago, I had a coordinator, shop supervisor, really talented guy, really high performer in our business, come to me and say, Don, I know we're putting a push on our quality program and our quality system. Can someone tell me, in the shop and planning a job and looking after our equipment, what do you want me to do? Like, what part, how can I contribute?
Right?
How can I contribute? Now, like, let's face it, folks. Like, and no offense to our deep research, high fact-finding people out there that value reading a 200-page document. But what I want you to use is to switch off that part of your mind for a second and just hear what I have to say. Your quality manual has parts and pieces, and your safety manual has parts and pieces that a lot of different people in your organization need to know 5 pages of. They don't need to read the damn manual. Stop telling them when they ask you, what do you want me to do? Read the manual. Look, I've been in safety, and in our industry, I became a safety professional, back in 1996. And no improvements in safety ever came from having a great safety manual, ever. It came from distilling it down to what are the 3 or 4 things that we need to focus on for our frontline people to do? What are the 2 or 3 things that we need to focus on for our supervisors to do? What are the 1 or 2 things that we need to focus on for our managers to do? All as part of an integrated set of processes that if they did those things, we would see dramatic improvements in safety and engagement in teamwork. Policies and manuals are not processes. Procedures are not processes. Processes are simple step-by-step sets of actions on what do I need to do to get an outcome, a result. Now that result might be doing a simple quality inspection of a piece of equipment. And then when you look at that and you have this simple set of steps, then you can apply B equals MAP and go, what's the motivation here? What's the ability? How do I make the ability? How do I create a prompt for people to inspect every piece of equipment? And sometimes it's as simple as, no one needs a 47-page procedure to do a 8-step inspection. What you need to do is give them an 8-step form, a checklist. That's the tool to make ability faster. This supervisor that I was talking about, again, I'm on my soapbox, folks, and I'm passionate about how policies and manuals and programs are not processes that get anything done. They're rule books that are reference material. They're good, they're important, but they don't create action. So this top performing person comes to me and says, Don, I just need to know what I got to do to contribute to quality. So I went to our quality manager, who was a very instinctive high fact finder. He had high fact finding instincts, and he was a subject matter expert. The combination of those 2 things lead to a belief that reading the manual is going to create change. And it does not. He said to me, when I asked, what does this guy need to do to make a big contribution for our efforts in quality? And his answer was, tell him to read the manual. I'm like, God, stop it. You are inside of MAP, when someone says, just tell me what to do, and your response is read a 300-page manual, their motivation goes from interested to disengaged.
I'm not doing it, Don.
Huh?
I'm not doing it, and I love details.
Look, I'm the signing authority on our company's quality manual and all of our registrations, and I've never read the whole darn manual. I've referred to the manual when we had things we need to investigate, when we've had things we needed to improve, and in little pieces we've gone, hey, let's review this part of our plan to see if this is relevant, so we can make it more relevant, that we can make it better. But I didn't read the manual. But I do have a quality team who probably has, because that's what they're paid to do. But their job is to manage the program and the manual, not to tell people that the way to implement the intent of our quality system is by getting every employee to read the manual. It's that team's responsibility to then break that down and develop a set of processes that says, if you're a field supervisor, here's the 3 quality processes that you need to pay attention to. If you're a shop foreman, here are the couple of quality processes that you can focus on that can make the biggest improvement. Folks, hear me. Policies are not processes. Procedures are not processes. And I uncovered this in some process review, even with one of our asset managers yesterday. And we were going through helping him understand this concept that procedures are not processes. And when I finally worked through this with him, he could see that a lot of his processes were these detailed instruction manuals on that are actually procedures.
Yeah.
Processes are not procedures. Processes are a tool in the A part of MAP. They are a tool to provide people training if they don't know how to follow the 2 or 10 steps in the process. They are not a process. Stop telling people when they've got to do an inspection on a truck to follow a 47-page procedure. Give them a checklist with the 5 things, the 10 things, the 12 things they need to do. And your world and your team will be transformed. There's my rant, Mallory.
Talk to me about the difference between compliance versus action, because we're working towards getting that action sequence. So where is the connection between compliance and action sequence?
Compliance is important for checking the box and for the bureaucratic organizations and the quality and the engineering and the safety audits that you have to do. The manuals are there to provide the guidelines for providing the evidence in those things. And so I'm not dismissing the need for compliance, because without creating a standard, we'd have buildings that fell down. We would have piping systems that wouldn't work. So compliance is important. However, that is not going to get anything done. And the real connection is this. You've got these programs and these manuals that you need to prove compliance to, and there's all sorts of third-party auditing programs that our industrial and construction owners and clients require us to get the right scores on and check all the boxes, and I'm not debating any of that. However, the way you get there is not by having the manual. The way you get there is by having and breaking down what are the most important things in that program that we need to get people to do. And as I said earlier, they don't all, not everyone in the company needs to do every single thing in these programs. And so if you want to make it relevant, if you want to keep their motivation high, if you want to keep their ability high, if you want to, give people simple prompts where they will actually take action, then give them a simplified set of steps where when you want an outcome like inspect your truck before you drive it, or here's how we do an inspection on a piece of equipment. Here are the steps that we're going to use in planning a project. Here are the steps we're going to use to approve an expenditure. Don't spend 3 hours trying to explain how to do it. Just tell them how to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Action.
And action. And so within that, and again, Dr. Fogg really worked on making each action, we've all heard of SMART goals. Well, inside of the action and the action sequence, we make each action, each step crisp and clear so that there is no confusion on what it means when it says, open this piece of software, click this button, fill out the MER, and hit submit. No confusion around what do I do?
Yeah.
Not how to do it, just what do I do? What,
so
not how. And when you figure that out and you start to make core processes, if you're an EOS company, we call them core processes. These are simple 12-step or under sequences of action. And here's a really important thing that so many people get wrong. an action sequence, a core process, starts with whoever the process owner is, defining exactly the desired outcome. At the end of this process, we will have an approved requisition. That's the goal. It isn't to explain it. It isn't to justify it. It isn't to tell you how to do it. You got to start with, and I love when, and this is why I really enjoy and think so much of what Dr. Fogg has created here. And when I go back to Einstein and physics, and when something is simple, it's beautiful. What I see with what this process has done, I like, I always test concepts and theories when it pops up in multiple places. And 30 years ago, I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey, a different doctor, and he had a rule, simple rule. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. Begin with the end in mind. Meaning, you got to start a process by deciding what the outcome of the process is. And if it's a really complicated outcome, like we got to have this, and we got to have this, and we got to have this, and we got to, then that's likely a handful of processes that are all going to be supporting a grander project. And so what happens with a lot of people, particularly if they are, if they don't know how to simplify, if they are really high on fact finder, or if they are really super structured, they will try to pack 15 processes into one thing and call it a procedure and go, and they wonder why it doesn't get done. Because you can't have 47 steps in a process. You just, that's likely a procedure, because if you can't write a step in a sentence, you got to write a paragraph, it's likely a procedure. And it's likely a procedure that has the requirements for maybe 5, 6, 7 processes baked into it. Break it up into chunks, define those outcomes, and you will transform your life and your business.
Yeah. So when we're talking about all of that, my favorite thing when we're dealing with these teams, and they've done exactly that, they've talked about, well, I need to get this done. And now that we've got 47 steps and there's 18 people involved and they're overwhelmed. And I let them get it off their chest. And I say, okay, what is the outcome? What triggers us to start? And this is the biggest important piece, because they're like, oh, what is the first step? Like when we're dealing with new hires, okay, they've signed an offer letter. Okay, great. That's our starting point. Where's our end point? What is the outcome that we're looking for? Well, that they're on the job and that they're billable and they're started. Okay, great. Now, walk me through, and here's my absolute favorite thing. I think our people are tired of me saying this, but who does what by when? And that is how you identify each action in the action sequence. So we've identified that first trigger. We've identified the outcome. Now walk me through who does what by when to get to the end. And as we're going along, there's often times where like, okay, this person does this once this happens, but then they need to do all these other things. Okay, great. That's a whole other process on how to fill out those forms, or where those forms need to go, or what that person needs to do with that information. Yeah. But that's not about getting from, I've given you an offer letter, to getting you started on the job. That's not part of this process. That's not part of this action sequence. So we continue on, because when we're having this whole conversation, we get all the ideas and all of the things out of their head. And then we go and we've got this whole separate second list or second tier, whatever you want to call it, of, okay, we've identified that we have 4 more processes that we now need to dig in, and you're not the owner of them. And now we need to go talk to finance, because finance, their trigger is they receive the payroll information from a new hire. Now they need to make sure that they get paid. How does that, the outcome is everything's updated in their payroll system and the employee is paid. Okay, great. What are the 10 steps? 12 maximum, but who does what by when to get there? And I've really been loving working with our teams, because we started with some of these really simple ones that we identified in that first workshop. And we've gone, okay, here is your unique action skills. Here is your action instincts. And here's the areas that we need to improve upon. Right. And sometimes it's knowledge. And well, I don't know how to do that. And it's always changing. Okay, great. Who owns that count on ability to see a new hire to completion? Okay, it's the hiring manager in our case, right? However, the hiring manager isn't responsible for every single step. They're the owner of that process. So we're able to sit down with them and go, okay, but then somebody else does that. Okay, great. Now I've got those other processes. I can move on to those other people and say, okay, great. Here's what we need to do. And our people inside of your other company here have identified that and are saying, well, there's no process for it. Okay, great. Block a half an hour with me. Let's go through it. And they're learning to figure it out on their own because it's like, and it's so empowering for them because, well, so-and-so's not following it. Is it documented? Well, no. And in an EOS company, it's shared by all and followed by all, right? So,
well, simplified, document, and followed by all, right? And
yeah,
I've heard this with people who quite the light bulb hasn't quite come on, that they haven't quite switched on that a process is a simple action sequence to get a defined result, and it's documented. And so I often have said to people, well, what's the process? And they'll start telling me what it is. Oh, no. Is this documented? No. Then you don't have a process. You do not have a process. You have tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge is great, but it's useless in scaling your business. It's useless in repeatability. It's useless in improving. Because if you don't write down the way that you do it, we can't spot how we can help you even improve upon it. We can't spot that you've got 3 steps in there that add no value. I remember a number of years ago that I was hearing all of this feedback around our engineering data sheets, and that we were receiving this information from our clients, and then it was taking forever for our technicians and our coordinators to manually type all this stuff into our system. And I said, you have the data sheet. The customer has sent it to you in a Word document or a PDF, or they took a picture of it, whatever. Why are you typing it all in to the system? What are you doing with that information when it's typed in? Is there some thing that happens because you've typed it into the system? Well, no, I don't know. I was just told to do it. By who? I don't remember. Stop doing that. Right? And what happened was, we had some ongoing IT things going on that were setting up this tool so we could in the future create some automation so that clients could fill that information in online and it would automatically populate into our job files. But we hadn't activated it yet. It was there, and someone decided, well, because it's there, we got to start typing this in. And I went, like, big part of the process was stop doing that. Stop.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they went, oh, you just saved me 2 hours a job. Like, how long have you been doing this? And so what's really important, and I don't know if you embrace this concept of action instincts and action skills first for your individual team members, because that has a massive impact on the effectiveness of how you put together processes. Because if you don't lean into their action skills and their action instincts, their motivation is going to be heavily affected and their ability is going to be heavily affected. And so stuff won't get done. If you give someone like me, who is a 5 on follow through in my action instincts, a blank sheet of paper, and says, write this thing, it ain't going to happen. You can prompt me and prompt me and prompt me, because I'm going to naturally procrastinate because it's working against my grain. And so understanding that about your team is super important so that you can match up the right actions with the right kinds of action skills and action instincts. Because if you don't, you are really impacting the M and the A and the MAP step. And so understanding that piece and then moving that into the action formula and using the action formula as the next part of instinct and skill is so valuable. And my observation and my measurement is that when you dial in the first two elements of the individual team members, and you're clear on that, and you know, it's not just I know it. Okay, it's not just about knowing it. It's about using it, guys. Like if you just have knowledge, I have knowledge that Mallory is a 9723. Now, if I don't leverage that, if I don't use that, then it's useless. It's information. And so I'm gonna go on another little soapbox rant for a minute, because I think it's on this point of information does not create action, folks. And so Dr. Fogg has done a lot of studies, and then he on the fact that more information actually creates less action. Okay? And here's the evidence of this. Okay, so if you have a belief that knowledge is power, great. Knowledge is an action. Okay, so tons of information does not create action, and here is the evidence. For my whole life, scientists and government bodies have been really clear on eat healthy, stay active. We have more information today on how to be fit and healthy than has ever existed in the entire existence of humanity. And yet we are at a state in our Western society of struggling more with physical health, with physical fitness, with obesity, with mental health than we ever have in history. Knowledge, more information about health has not changed people's actions, right? Knowing that you shouldn't eat a cheeseburger is not stopping people from eating cheeseburgers. Yeah. Period. Same idea. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that smoking kills. I've heard it my whole life, from the 1970s all the way through my entire life. You've heard the Surgeon General says, smoking causes cancer, smoking kills. They put pictures on the packages of cigarettes. People are still smoking, and then, I'm gonna be healthier. I'm gonna start vaping liquid into my lungs because that's going to be healthier. Is it? Look, we have all kinds of information that we shouldn't be inhaling all this stuff 20 times a day into our lungs, and still people are doing it every single day. Lots of information isn't changing behavior. Last example. My whole life, don't drink and drive. Mothers against drunk driving, and people are still getting behind the wheel and driving drunk. Why? Because more information doesn't change action. Action formulas and action sequences around motivation, ability, and prompt change behavior. How do you change drunk driving? Maybe you're self-motivated. Maybe it's the context of the situation. Like you're at a kid's birthday party. Wrong place to be drunk driving, right? If anywhere, right? But hopefully you're self-motivated to not want to do it. But what I have always told people around this topic is, look, the best time to make a choice around driving safely when you're going to be exposing yourself to alcohol is before you pick up the first drink.
Yeah.
Right. So when your motivation is highest, meaning I don't want to drive tonight, do something in that action that makes your ability to not drive later way easier. Like lock away your keys. Don't take your vehicle. There's simple things you can do before you pick up a drink that will make it way easier to not drive drunk, right? And then there can be prompts. You can remember, you can have other people remember, there are ways within the action formula to design actions so that you don't do these things. But the point is, having tons of information, having a manual does not create action. And it's proven with obesity, with smoking, and with drunk driving. And everyone listening can see that all around you. There's tons of information on these topics, and it doesn't change people's behavior. And so your safety manual will not create safer employees. Your quality
Yeah.
manual will not create higher quality. They're important, but they are not tools of action.
Exactly. So the next thing I want to kind of bring up and when we talk about is we've talked about behavior equals motivation and ability and prompt. Now, what happens when we're dealing with an action sequence when we have a group of people who are all involved and nobody can agree on how this sequence of events is meant to get done? Because we've talked about the pretty simple ones where there are already predefined examples of how we do things. We know how we're going to hire a person. We know the steps. They've been tribal knowledge, but now we've documented them into a core process. There's often times where we have situations where person A does it this way, person B does it this way, and person E and F do it completely different. They're getting the same results, but we're not able to scale these actions or expand them because everybody's getting to the same result very differently. And that isn't to say that you and I both agree. Results matter, and how you get there doesn't always matter. But when we're talking about a core process,
Great
this
point.
is the
Results
difference.
matter. How you get there sometimes doesn't.
Sometimes doesn't. But when we're talking about documenting core processes, the need to have consensus on who does what by when is really important. And it can be very difficult when you're sitting with a group of people and saying, okay, I need you to agree. And Dr. BJ Fogg has come up with this amazing way to do this where everybody gets heard and there's no confrontation. And I am, if you look at my action instincts, I'm a 9723. And that too means I am very risk adverse and affectively, I don't like conflict. So I want to avoid conflict.
And I'm the opposite.
You are the opposite. That's why we get along so well. I give you all the conflict.
That. We work so well together, and yet I'm a 7 on my quick start, and you're a 2. And I don't enjoy conflict, but I like confronting things. And but somehow, because we know that about each other, we work super well together. And that's a really important thing to understand, is understanding and respecting the strength that each person brings to a situation allows you to be way more effective as a team, right?
Absolutely. So we've both gone through this Dr. BJ Fogg's workshops on how to bring these people together. And I want you to help our audience understand what are the 5 people or so, say that we're having just that aren't agreeing. What are those 5 people? How do we choose those that are involved in this core process? And how do we work them through without that confrontation, with everybody being heard and getting to the end result of a documented core process that everybody can follow?
Well, as you know, I grew up on the East Coast in Newfoundland. I've lived in Alberta all my adult life, but I had, up until the age of 18, I lived in Newfoundland, and you're half Newfoundlander as well.
I am.
So
Don't hold it against me.
In Newfoundland specifically, there's this old adage that I remember learning from old timers, hearing from old timers as a kid, and it says there's more than one way to skin a cat. Now,
Yep.
now I don't believe in skinning cats, folks, but it's the analogy that there's more than one way to get things done, and this results in 5 people doing it 5 different ways, and not all of them being effective and great. Some of them are less effective, right? And so that's important. But what's wonderful about the methodology baked into the Amplifier experience, that is the 8-step process in accomplishing better processes that Dr. Fogg created, is that everyone gets to contribute to finding the optimal, most effective process that gets a result. Okay. So, and there's a step in there where everyone gets to try a different method. However, to get there, there's a couple of key things that are super important that I want people to hear and understand. So first off, how do most companies try to write and publish processes that turn into procedures? It's the SME. Some subject matter expert is going to write down the 47 things you got to do to, you know, for a sales process, for a quality inspection, for, you know, for an operations procedure. Some subject matter expert is going to write all this stuff down and call it a process, and it's not a process.
Now, are these subject matter experts the people using the process or the people that are being holding them accountable?
Well, that's the point, right? And I was guilty of this myself because I was trying to get stuff done. So I would write what I thought were processes, and they were really detailed procedures and methodologies. They were part of a manual, they were part of a procedure. So I used to do this before I learned these epiphanies, right? And so, you know, is the subject matter expert important in being involved? Maybe, okay. But there are 5 people minimum. You might have more, but you don't want to have a huge group of people. You can't have 15 people developing a process. You know, 5, 6 people is about the right number that I've seen that can actually contribute to this. And they have very specific roles. So who are they? So outside of a facilitator like Mallory, who will facilitate the process for you, and she does for us, someone needs to be outside the jar and not connected to it, that can just guide doing this effectively. And that's what Mallory does in these workshops. So what you need is a process owner, someone who is responsible for defining what's the outcome I'm trying to accomplish, the result of the process. Someone needs to be the process owner. That person should not be the doers in the contribution to the process, because that creates a confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is I have a belief and I'm going to prove that I'm right. Right. And so if you're the process owner, and I've been guilty of this, folks, I'm the process owner of lots of processes in our business. Process. I say it both ways. I've got a Canadian and a British family. Potato, right? So the process owner defines the outcome. Now, you may or may not, depending on if the process owner is also the subject matter expert, you may or may not have an SME as part of the process who's going to be very detailed. But often, if they've already written a very detailed procedure, you can keep them out of the room, because if they're not doing the actions, they shouldn't be there.
Right.
Shouldn't be there. They just shouldn't be there. Right? Process owner and a subject matter expert, or the content that's been created. And then there are 3 types of action instinct people who should be contributing. Those people are the people who are actually going to be doing the steps in this process. And they need to be the ones who experiment in this workshop to define the individual actions and come up with the right sequence. As I said, it's more than one way to skin a cat. So there's more than one way to combine these sets of actions into a sequence to get the desired result. And part of the process allows you to experiment with those different sequences to come up with the one that is the most predictable of getting the fastest, best result. But the 3 kinds of people are 3 specific kinds of action instincts. And so one of them is me. I'm 5 on follow through. One of them is someone like Mallory. I'm a 4 on follow through. It's actually a couple more team. Yeah, I'm being ambitious with how much I will be structured.
Sounds about right.
I was thinking about a couple of my team members I was talking with yesterday. 2 of them were 5s. But you know, there's not a lot of difference. But you know, I'm a 4 on follow through. So I'm in the middle of the scale, on the lower end of the middle, in accommodating structure and templates and sequences. And so
that's where we can't give you the blank slate.
You can't give me the blank slate. My instinct is give me something that I can look at and go, hey, we can tweak this and make it better. You know, 10 steps is great. I'll tell you how you can do it in 7. Don't give me a blank piece of paper telling me how to write the whole thing down. My subject matter expert head will kick in and I'll write a procedure, no problem. But that's not what we're trying to accomplish. So anyway, simplify this down, folks. on the second number in your Colby, which is the follow through or your instinct for creating and using and following structure. I'm a 4, Mallory's a 7. And so you need 3 people. You need someone who is on the reacting, counteracting mode. You need someone who's accommodating, and you need someone who's initiating, so that you have the right blend of people who are not going to have too simple of a process that it just doesn't create a result, and you're not going to have too many steps involved. And so what you're trying to do is have three different types of action instincts in the room when you're creating action sequences, so that you can find the right mix of the number of actions that are going to be in this sequence, so that it isn't too little and it isn't too less. It's the Goldilocks zone. It's just right. Those 3 people who have those 3 different action instincts have to be the people who are familiar with and are going to have to be doing this process every day. And if that's not you, get out of the room. Process owner, a facilitator, and 3 different types of action instincts, and you have a room that can power through and make action sequence core processes for you so effectively that it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind.
Really
So
will. It really will.
What we are doing in this workshop that Mallory, facilitates, is blending together the science of action instinct and the science of action formula to really create this highly productive, highly effective group of people who can just get stuff done in creating effective processes. So those are the 5 kinds of people. Those 3 kinds of people in 3 different follow-through zones on your action instinct: the process owner, the facilitator, and maybe an SME, if you can keep them out of the way of trying to complicate things way too much.
So I'm just going to recap, because we've just covered a whole lot of awesome information for our listeners. Is we've started from last episode going through blank slate. How do we increase performance? How do we understand our people? How do we understand and identify gaps in where our action sequencing, our process, our knowledge, where are those problems? Now we've gotten to the point where we can now start to take action into solving those problems with documenting core processes and having everybody being heard, and there being a one way to get things done that's documented so we can scale our business. Like you said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to get things done. Results matter. But in business, we still need to have a core process documented, because I can't open another location and say, well, we do things this way over here, but that location does things differently. That's not scalable. That's not scalable business. And we want to be able to help our businesses that we work with, our clients and our own business, be able to do this in a very functional way. So I love doing these workshops, and they're broken down into 2. So we talked about the first one, which goes through action instincts and the unique action skills. This one can be done with the same group of people once we identify different ways, and it's the way to go through your action sequencing and your action formula. Now, Don, we also offer some coaching as well for different clients. Let's walk our listeners through what that looks like, because we've just talked about all these experiences or workshops, however you want to term them, that are more time consuming, we'll say. They have huge value, and I don't like 8-hour days. You know me and my workshops, my experiences, they start at 10 and they end by 4. Like, let's just hammer this in, get it in and out. Like, I'm not a morning person, and my brain shuts off by 4:30. Like, I got to help get these people in and out in the most efficient way possible. And that's how I've developed these experiences for our people. But what's the next step after we've done all this?
Well, I personally have multiple coaches that I have hired that work with me on a regular basis for my own needs. And the point to this is really simple, right? Like, am I a smart guy? Am I a successful entrepreneur? Sure. I think I've spent my whole life trying to figure out how to be a good leader, good manager, good entrepreneur. However, you cannot see what's going on in your business and in your own way of doing things when you're inside the jar, right? A coach can see the label and help you see things that you don't see. What I love to do is help people unpack that, support them. And, I had a coaching session with someone yesterday, and what I try to accomplish in a 1 hour coaching session is to make one step forward, one piece of progress, one new thinking tool, one new action they're building blocks that just build someone up to be a stronger, better version of themselves, sometimes getting past their own self-limiting beliefs, sometimes helping them see an obstacle that is causing them to not be able to move forward, that they just can't see because they somehow accept it. And my approach is really simple. What do you want to accomplish? What have you tried so far? Really unpack what's holding you back. And the goal of coaching is to take your 80%. I add on 20%, some piece of insight I heard through our conversation, some piece of information you gave me that gives you something that can move you forward to the next step and put one more brick on the wall and making you stronger. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy helping people. And so we take on a limited number of coaching clients. I personally only work with either leadership team level people and primarily with private entrepreneurs who are trying to take their teams to a new level. And I enjoy doing it. And I am a certified Action Instincts coach. I am a certified behavior designer. I don't conduct the workshops because I'm a little bit more entrepreneurial passion, but the way that I apply my deep insight into action instincts, action skills, action formula, and action sequence is one-on-one with senior level people who really want to take these ideas and either add fuel to and the momentum to what they learned in the workshop, or they simply want to work on it on a more ongoing supportive basis. And so that's how Mallory and I work together. She helps our clients do the evaluations, do the assessments, do the workshops, and really create the value and build the momentum. And then I work with the entrepreneur and entrepreneurial team to do deeper insight and to have ongoing work that supports that effort till to the point where they really feel that they've gotten much stronger in these areas. And then we pivot to what other area of their business that they might need success or more success in, because this is about your people and your processes. But then I, as an entrepreneur, love diving into how do we apply this to operations, or how do we apply this to asset management, or how do we apply these ideas to sales, to marketing, to different aspects of your business. Because once you understand these concepts of action, the instincts, the skills, the formula, the sequence, they all interact with each other, and they all can be applied to any area of your business where you need to improve results. It's just that simple. They are simply a toolkit to improve results, to improve team strength, to improve your capability. And I love working one-on-one with people. It's my passion.
Absolutely. And like you said, Don, we have worked together to create this in the first place. You and I started working together almost 7 years ago now. And these were just ideas in your head in one of your many notebooks with your chicken scratch that nobody can read. And we developed it.
Sometimes years later, I can't read them.
This is true. This is true. Thank goodness your daughter doesn't take after your writing.
Well, I've got a remarkable that you set me up on now, which has been a fantastic tool that is getting better at translating my chicken scratches into font. So that's pretty good.
That's awesome. Using technology to make life easier for me. So when we've worked together, we've talked about entrepreneurial partnerships. And when we first started this topic, it was very much between the entrepreneur and their assistant. Because when I started doing this, there's really not a whole lot of resources out there for that assistant to understand and connect the dots in EOS terms between the visionary and the integrator. And there is that huge role that person can play in between the make it up and the make it real. and then make it reoccur, and how that all plays together. And all of that we've just talked about, all these action instincts, all these unique action skills and formulas and sequences, they all play into that partnership that is entrepreneurial. And as
Absolutely.
you've said, your unique action skill is that one-on-one with that high level. That's where your passion is. That's where your mindset is. That's where you can provide the most value. That's not to say anybody in an organization can't pull value from you, because we all know that's true. Anybody can approach you and say, well, here's my issue, but you can add the most value to an organization with talking with those certain people. My passion and unique action skills is to take those ideas that you have uncovered with those entrepreneurs, those visionaries, those integrators, and how do we make those reoccur? How do we make it real? And how do we create that vision to become a reality, right? And how do we connect the future and where we're going? So I think in the next episode, I'd love to be able to dive a little bit deeper into that process and how.
Yeah, I think it's really important, because
businesses
I've experienced it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs experience it, that they may be doing some things to work on themselves, or they may be doing some things that are working on their team. How do you build momentum? How do you build momentum and try to keep pace between the entrepreneur's work and growth, or the leadership team's work and growth, and the rest of the team? And it's really two different approaches, right? And both need to kind of work in lockstep so that you build strength in your business. So let's dive into that more in the next episode. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. I've covered what I think is an amazing amount of information for our listeners today. Thank you, John, for all of your insights as to how behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt can help all businesses exceed expectations.
Yeah. So because I'm an action guy, I hate talk. Although, no, I shouldn't say that. I love to talk about ideas. I hate talk that doesn't result in action. And so,
yes,
folks, here is the next step for you. If you've heard this and you're inspired, I want you to email Mallory. Your next step, email her and ask her about a workshop, or ask her about an action assessment. That's your next step. Is just reach out and say, hi, I'd like to learn more. Mallory, what's your email address?
Mallory, MALLORY at amplifierx.com.
There you go, folks. Of all the actions we've talked about, that is the next first best action that you can take if you want to learn more. No need to make a commitment, but if you email Mallory, we'll have a chat with you.
Yeah, and the email will be in the link.
Thanks, Mallory, and we'll look forward to everyone coming and listening to us on the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye now.